Hello YouTube. In part 4 of Don't Vote for the Douche or the Turd, I exposed Obama's flip-flops on gun control and civil liberties. Unfortunately, there are more, and you'll hear some of them now in part 5. On the Cuban embargo, common sense prevailed on January 2004 when Obama said that we must end the embargo with Cuba, and that it utterly failed in the effort to overthrow Castro. In what is a transparent and pathetic attempt at ethnic identity political pandering for the Cuban vote in Florida, which Obama promised to put an end to, Obama changed his tune on August 2007, where he claimed that he would not repeal the embargo because of it supposedly being an important inducement for change, obviously failing to explain how a 40-year failed policy would induce anything other than votes in November. On illegal immigration, when asked on a March 2004 questionnaire if the government should do its job and follow the rule of law instead of pandering to corporate elites, ethnocentric interest groups, and the corrupt and incompetent Mexican government, by cracking down on employers who hire illegal immigrants, Obama said, oppose. Of course, on one of his many televised debates on January 21st, 2008, Obama, realizing that his radical position would not sell in November, said that we do have to crack down on those employers that are taking advantage of the situation. Even without the flip-flop, though, I would never under any circumstances vote for someone who wouldn't at the very least crack down on employers who hire illegal immigrants, as this is a shameful and corrupt act of exploitation that is a de facto form of slavery. I find it very hypocritical how many of the same politicians who advocate amnesty talk about grandiose plans for guest worker programs and paths to legalization, yet say almost nothing about implementing minimum wage and labor protections for these guest workers, which if not done would inevitably lead to a repeat of the human rights abuses of the Bracero program of the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. On health care, during his presidential campaign, Obama has promised a health care plan where subsidies are given to people who cannot afford to buy private insurance themselves, as opposed to a single-payer system where the government is the sole insurer. Obama did not always hold this position, though. In June 2003, he said the following: I happen to be a proponent of a single-payer health care program. I see no reason why the U.S. cannot provide basic health insurance to everybody. A single-payer health care plan, a universal health care plan, and that's what I'd like to see. There are people who sincerely believe that a single-payer system should be the ultimate goal, but that a system like the one Obama has proposed during the campaign should be used as a step to ease the public into it, as sort of a transition step, or else it will never happen. And many are arguing that Obama's flip-flop is not a flip-flop for that particular reason, but some of Obama's statements, such as, I never said that we should have a single-payer system. I said that if I were starting from scratch, I would probably go with a single-payer system. Say otherwise. You know, folks, I never said that Obama was full of shit. I said if I were starting from scratch, I would probably say he's full of crap. Sarcasm aside, Obama not only denied his previous advocacy of a single-payer system, on January 21st, 2008, he even went as far as to mock it as a euphemism for socialized medicine, obviously ignoring and even inadvertently proving the fact that socialized medicine is a vapid and vaguely defined political euphemism designed to scare people. On NAFTA, during the primary, in order to attract blue-collar voters whose jobs are being shipped overseas and whose food is polluted with E. coli thanks in large part to corrupt trade deals that benefit corporate and political elites at the expense of everyone else, like NAFTA, Obama promised he would pull out of NAFTA if it wasn't successfully renegotiated to have actual labor and environmental standards. When the dust settled and Obama won the nomination, all of a sudden NAFTA magically transformed from a devastating big mistake, which is one of the biggest job killers in recent history, might I add, to the second coming of Christ. Obama, of course, had to renege his previous promise of using the prospect of pulling out of NAFTA, as he put, a hammer to pressure Canada and Mexico into a deal that doesn't screw the average Joe, and justified his flip-flop by saying, I'm not a big believer in doing things unilaterally. I'm a big believer in opening up a dialogue and figuring out how we can make this work for all people, and dismissed his previous promise as being overheated and amplified during the campaign. If that was really all it was, then how does Obama explain his economic advisor Austin Goolsby's meeting on February 8, 2008 with the Canadian General Consul in Chicago, where he assured him that Obama's stated position on NAFTA was more reflective of political maneuvering than policy, and, in fact, that's going forward, the Obama camp was going to be very careful of the appropriate message without sounding too protectionist. In other words, until recently, the Obama campaign has been saying one thing in public and another thing in private. Anyone with integrity or a brain would call this hypocrisy. But the Obama campaign, with its enablers and the press, call it some crap that means absolutely nothing, like recalibrating or refining the message, while ignoring the fact that there is little difference between Saint Obama of Chicago's recalibrating and refining and Richard Nixon and George W. Bush's recalibrating and refining. On Israel, Barack Obama, like far too many in Washington, made the political pilgrimage to the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, on June 4, 2004, to suck up to the Israeli lobby that has contributed to our corrupt and hypocritical policy, where we claim to be neutral brokers of peace and rightfully denounce Palestinian terrorism, yet ignore Israeli government-backed policies and the Palestinian territories, which are a de facto form of apartheid. Obama promised at his political pilgrimage that Jerusalem will remain the Jewish capital of Israel and it must remain undivided. In other words, even though that Muslims also have religious sites in Jerusalem, they will have no legitimate claim to even a portion of it, because we all know that God likes it when people kill each other in His name instead of trying to work things out like civilized human beings. Obama flip-flopped on a CNN interview the day after this shameful pander. Well, obviously, it's going to be up to the parties to negotiate a range of these issues, and Jerusalem will be part of those negotiations. On diplomacy, at the same AIPAC conference, Obama flip-flopped on a campaign promise he made in the CNN YouTube Democratic debate to meet with leaders from rogue nations like North Korea and Iran without preconditions, by saying, contrary to the claims of some, I have no interest in sitting down with our adversaries just for the sake of talking, but as President of the United States, I'd be willing to lead tough and principled diplomacy with the appropriate Iranian leaders at a time and place of my choosing, if and only if it can advance the interests of the United States. That's all for Part 5 of Don't Vote for the Douche or the Turd. Stay tuned for Part 6, where I expose 2 more of Obama's flip-flops and reveal the second reason why I am not voting for Barack Obama.